gets the next question.
I need to respond to that.
All right, 30 seconds then.
Folks, Mr. Nugent just stood in a room of Hernando County Republicans 2 nights ago and told that entire group of people, it's on videotape, that he would gladly sign the contract from America. This is a man who is telling every different room in this district a different story. This has got to stop. And scaring you, just like he has scared the citizens of Hernando County for years when the county commissioners have asked him to cut his budget, and he's told us that, well, police officers will be taken off the street. Now he's scaring you by telling you that Jason, the mean old constitutionalist, is going to take away your Social Security. I pledge to you that's not going to happen in the short term, but we must begin to think in the long term how to fix that problem.
Thank you, Mr. Sager. Sheriff Nugent.
Well, it's amazing that you bring up the Sheriff's Office. You know, last year we returned $2 million to the Board of County Commissioners. The year before that we cut our budget by $1 million, and this year we cut it by $1 million. We reduced our budget by over 6.5% in the last 2 years. That's doing it for the right reasons. That's being a conservative. And you know what? Law enforcement, I make no excuses because it is about keeping my citizens safe. If that was not the case, it's doubtful that I would have been re-elected 2 years ago with 73% of the vote.
Sheriff Nugent, Mr. Sager got into this race because he discovered some fundamental disagreements with Representative Brown-Waite, which I am certain he will be willing to share in a moment. Can you describe any policy areas in which you find yourself in conflict with GBW?
Well, I would not have voted for cash for clunkers. I'm totally opposed to any stimulus or TARP bailouts. I'm opposed to the federal government using our dollars in a capitalist society to bail out companies that if you can't make it, you should fail. I mean, that's simple. That's what we've done. That's what's made America great. The good companies continue, and the bad companies go to the side. That's how we've done business here in this country forever. And so I don't believe that stimulus, and particularly when we talked about the stimulus that she voted for, the one item as it relates to cash for clunkers, I would not have voted for that.
All right, Mr. Sager, your disagreements with the incumbent?
Folks, I can't believe I'm going to stand up here and do this. Ginny Brown-Waite did not vote for the stimulus plan. She did vote for cash for clunkers, and that was one of the things I did disagree with her with. She also voted for the 2009 omnibus spending bill that had over 9,000 earmarks in it. She is one of the Republican leaders that has championed the cause for embryonic stem cell research and spending your money for that purpose. But, again, I can't believe I'm defending, but I gotta be fair. She did not vote for the stimulus, but I would never vote for stimulus either. But that is not one of the issues that she and I disagreed with. She voted against the stimulus and the TARP bill.
Anybody wanting more on this? Okay. Mr. Sager, regarding the U.S. Constitution, you are a self-described strict constructionist and originalist. Why, in this modern America, the founders, in all their genius, couldn't possibly have imagined, should we be constrained by an 18th century document? In other words, what's wrong with a living Constitution?
I forgot to mention, that was what set me off last year in October, was Ginny Brown-Waite stood up there and said it's a living document. And 4 days later, I entered this race. Folks, our founders were men of faith. And yesterday, supporters of my opponent called into a local radio station, like clockwork. The radio station host even noticed it and said, Jason was all right, but he was a little too Christian for us. He's got to tone it down with that God stuff. Folks, our founders were religious men, and they knew that men were born with sin. That's who we are. The Constitution of the United States is not simply some 18th century document. Our founders knew that even the most righteous of men, left in a position of unfettered power over another, would eventually become a tyrant. And the Constitution was a limitation on that power. We absolutely need a limitation on the power of men. I do not feel comfortable living in a country underneath the President of the United States who feels he has unlimited power.
Sheriff Sheriff Nugent, 1 minute on the idea of a living Constitution.
Well, first of all, it's not a living document. But the Founding Fathers had a great idea in regards to the ability to amend the Constitution. Because as far thinking as they were, they couldn't obviously see where America would be at this point in time. So the Founding Fathers gave us the ability to amend it. And it has been amended. And there's been, amendments repealed. Prohibition was one that repealed prohibition. So the Founding Fathers crafted an outstanding document that we live by today. And it's one that, we got folks up in D.C. that have utilized a number of the Commerce Clause and others to try to circumvent the Constitution of the United States. And they do it on a regular basis.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any more of that? Okay, good enough. Sheriff Nugent, it appears from what I've read that you and Mr. Sager agree on the need to repeal the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Could you describe what in your mind are maybe 3 of the most egregious aspects of the law as it stands?
First of all, it's a job killer. Second of all, it's a job killer. And third of all, it's a job killer. Nowhere in America have we been, they don't listen to us. It is a group of people up there that have their liberal agenda that will do nothing to get in the way of passing it. They certainly don't want to hear from you and I in regards to what's important at all. If they did, we wouldn't have Obamacare. That is a $1 trillion boondoggle that we need to eliminate and repeal.
Mr. Sager, your problems with Obamacare?
It's unconstitutional. And let me go into something a little bit deeper here, folks. Again, 9 years in studying the policies and studying the issues and the history of where our nation's gone wrong. What we need to do, because our Republicans failed us between 2000 and 2006, they never had a plan. Here's part of our plan. First, we're going to repeal the 1945 McCarran-Ferguson Act, allowing the federal government to hold into account health insurance companies for the first time in their history and subject them to our antitrust laws. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to reform or repeal the HMO Act passed in the 1960s in order to give us portability and buy insurance on our own. And the next thing we're going to do is enact tort reform, finally.
That's it?
That's what we got.
Okay. Mr. Sager, also on Obamacare, assuming historic Republican landslides beyond any expert's prediction don't happen, you would not be joining a Congress with veto-proof GOP majorities. If successfully repealing Obamacare is not an option in 2011, what tactics to blunt its implementation would you pursue?
Well, Tom, and folks, understand, you can't repeal this next year, no matter what anybody says, because we will not have a supermajority status in the Senate to override a presidential veto. No matter what happens in this election, it's physically impossible. So, the only thing that we can do in Congress next year is defund the bill. In Congress, we have one very unique power that we haven't exercised in Lord knows how long, and that is to simply stop writing the checks. Our founders designed the Constitution and gave we the people of this nation the most important responsibility, and that is the power to tax and spend. All bills of taxation and revenue and spending must originate in the House of Representatives. And there's nothing holding any of us down saying that we don't have to spend money on something.